Hey, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of Indie Game Movement, the podcast that talks about the marketing and business of indie games. I'm Andrew Pappas. I'm going to be your host today, and this is episode 258, where we're going to be talking about how to quit your job to go full-time dev. All right, now, quitting your job to go full-time dev can be a, frightening thought. There's a lot to consider, but most importantly, is it the right move to make, and what's the best way to go about making that commitment? Thankfully, our guest today, Bruno Bonbardi, has gone through this process twice and shares his reasons, how prepared he was, and other considerations to be mindful of when you're ready to quit your job and go full-time dev. So that's what we're going to be talking about right here today on Indie Game Movement. Hey everybody, and we're back, and today with me I have Bruno Bonbardi. Bruno, how's it going, my friend?
Hey Andrew, thanks for having me.
Of course. Well, I wanted to quickly take a moment just for you to introduce yourself, tell everybody, what is it you do, what are you making, because there's a lot of stuff that we're going to want to find out more about, but for right now, just share a little bit about yourself, your what you're doing with your games, the company or studio you're working with, and then also just provide some things that you like to do in your spare time when you're not making games.
Cool. Yeah. Well, I've been a software developer for almost 12 years, and I had made some video games in the past, but just some weeks ago, I decided to transition into full indie game development. I'm originally from Argentina. Now I'm living in England. So the game which I'm working on is called Dun Jungle. It's a 2D action roguelite where you play as a monkey rescuing its human who got lost exploring jungle temples and dungeons.
Oh, wow. That sounds pretty cool. Nice. And what we're going to get into in a moment is this is something you're, for the most part, working completely full-time on, correct?
Yes, for the most part, yes. I'm also doing some freelance stuff to support myself.
Sweet. And outside of when you're doing some freelance and working primarily on this project, what do you like to do in your free time?
Well, of course, I like to play video games as well.
Nice.
It's one of my main passions. But also, I'm very social, so I constantly hang out with friends. Just, do some... I like to... I'm a good host, I think. I like to have people over a lot.
Nice.
And hopefully maybe we play some tabletop games and such.
Awesome. Yeah, I mean, that's something I need to do more of is get some people, just a few people over to play some more tabletop games for sure. And probably make more time to play video games. So that's awesome that you get to do that and make time for that, because I'm sure you're busy with everything else that you're doing.
Yeah, it's getting harder and harder actually, but I try to make the time for it.
Awesome. That's great to hear, and it's important to do, so I'm glad that you're doing it. All right, so before we get into our discussion, because I'm sure a lot of people are really curious about how you went about this and your whole process and everything, I'm going to have you go through the Q-Box round. And for those of you who aren't familiar, Q-Box round is just a series of random questions I prepared for Bruno here. And Bruno, you're just going to answer them as quickly as you can, but feel free to elaborate if you need to. So,
All right.
Are you ready for the Q-Box round?
Yes, I'm ready.
All right. If you could be any animal, what would it be?
A blue whale, because it gets to go to unexplored places of the ocean.
Ooh, I like that one. What is your most influential or inspiring game?
From the later generations, I'd say Dark Souls.
Okay.
I mean, it gets me very invested, and it kind of takes me back to when I was a kid playing games.
Nice. I like that. reasoning.
Yeah, in that sense that I'm really into it, and maybe I stop playing, I still thinking about the game, you know.
Yeah. No, I like that a lot. All right. Ice cream or pudding?
Pudding.
Ah, interesting choice.
Yeah, not a very ice cream person, to be honest.
Oh, a bonus one here. What's your favorite pudding?
Oh, caramel, I think. I mean, I'm from Argentina. We have flan
Oh,
with
yep,
dulce de
yep.
leche there and cream, and it's just my favorite dessert.
Ah, I've had some flan before, and it was really good, but I know I didn't have the best, so I'll have to try some authentic uh, flan from Argentina sometime in the future, or at least someone who's from there that knows how to make it well.
Yeah, totally. You definitely need dulce de leche there.
Ah, all right. uh, Zoo or aquarium?
Aquarium.
Yeah, I figured that might be the case, considering your animal would be a blue whale.
Yeah, yeah, totally.
And last but not least, a staple here on the show is what game are you playing now?
Right now I'm playing Going Under. Do you know it? It's a very fun roguelite with a cool humor style. Very, very fun and casual.
Nice. So fun, casual roguelike. I like that. Um, yeah, right off the top of my head, I'm not recalling it, but so I'll definitely need to check that out then. All right, cool. Well, thank you for sharing that information. It's it was pretty interesting to learn more about you on that front. Great answers. So, but now we're going to go right into the meat of our discussion here, which is the topic of how to quit your job and go full time dev. Now, I think this is really interesting topic because a few episodes ago, I think it was episode 252, we had Thomas Brush on here, who also talks about going full time dev, and it's based off of his own take and how he did it and everything. So I thought this was really interesting because with you. It probably have a little bit different story than Thomas Brush has, which I would assume everybody would have a different story from the next person, right? So to kick off our conversation, I want to ask you because I think this is something everybody is asking themselves who are considering quitting their job to do game dev full time is when is the right time to quit your job?
Yeah, sure. I mean, I think it's easy to feel that there is actually never a right time to quit your job.
Right.
Yeah, it's hard, but I'd say if you're unhappy with what you do and it's clear to you what would make you happy, and maybe you know it's possible to make a living of it, then you should go for it. Yeah, also it's good if you know you can fall back to your old job. In my case, I could.
Hmm.
So in case it doesn't work out, you have other options, you know.
No, that's a good reason because I think that happens a lot where people don't necessarily weigh in on the happy factor, right? Because when it comes to bills and things like that, that can be a very important factor and almost like creating a fear factor, if you will, where if I don't have this. So to the second part to your point, and I know you mentioned about also doing some freelance too, which we'll get into in a moment. You mentioned too about having something to fall back on. So if you don't mind, could you elaborate a little further in terms of how are you able to fall back on your old job, and what was your old job, if you don't mind sharing?
Sure. Yeah. Well, actually, I was a software developer, um, more exactly a Salesforce developer.
Okay, cool.
I had a very good relationship with my coworkers and just the company I worked for. So if I wanted to go back, I know they would take me in.
Okay, cool. So, and I think that says a lot too, because like establishing those relationships, not just with your coworkers, but with the company as well, and you probably went in setting those expectations with them, or at least starting those conversations to have. So, in your case, you just have the ability where they'd probably welcome you back, and I think the state with development and just as a whole and in general, makes it probably a little bit easier for you too. But let's say just your own thoughts in general for someone who might be in an environment that's not as hasn't been able to set the same expectations that you were able to set with your employer. Let's say it's just more of a toxic place, or just not something they would have the same option as you. Was there anything else you'd recommend to someone else if they're still considering quitting their job, and what would be like an alternative to that they could possibly fall back onto?
Yeah, I mean, if you don't have it so clear, but well, it kind of also depends on the market, right? If you're a developer, it will probably be easy for you to find another job.
Mm.
I think that. And if not, maybe just before leaving your job, maybe try to have some other side job on the line just to support yourself. I mean, or
No,
maybe consider going part-time
right. Okay.
instead of just quitting.
Yep. No, I think those are actually awesome suggestions there, and in fact, for me specifically, I kind of went on a similar path where I had something on the side, which is essentially RenGen, and I was actually starting similar conversations or considering, hey, about part time and things like that. So I that's your suggestions are something I can relate to directly, and I think they're also really good alternatives for anybody who's considering, hey, I'm passionate about this. I know it has some viability, and before I take that next step, though, I want to make sure these things are in place. But
Yeah, totally. I did that myself. I was working part-time before I quit my job
mm,
for about 4 months. So I got to taste it before going full in, you know?
see, I love that because and that's okay. I absolutely love that. We're going to get into, I think, a little bit of that too, because that transition kind of helped validate things for you to know if, hey, is this going to be a good fit for me or not? Because sometimes I think people who just quit, as I don't know how far this expression goes, but cold turkey, meaning they stop instantly.
Yeah.
Like they might find that, oh, I'm not as organized as I thought I would be, or all these other things, and or overwhelmed, or any number of reasons. So I absolutely love that you shared that, because it's a very important point, and I think it's a smart way to go about it, because it can be exciting to quit your job, and then sometimes reality can set you in or set you back, or it all depends, I guess, on preparedness. So speaking of preparedness, let's go in a slightly different direction here in terms of determining what's the best way to quit your job. So, I mean, you gave some insight, and actually, if I remember correctly, this is basically is this the second time you've quit your job, because you've worked on a project before, which was Trials of Azra, and you're currently working on the Jungle. So, I guess take yourself back to that first time you were planning on quitting your job, and then you did. How prepared were you when you did that initially to focus on developing Trials of Azra?
Yeah, that was a whole different story. Let's let's get into that. I was not very prepared at all. But in that time, I was young. I was living with my parents, so I didn't have a lot of bills
Mm.
to pay, sorry. Yeah, and just I was working for about 2 years, just managed to save up and just went for it. I mean, we were three friends who wanted to make a video game. We got programming skills and art skills, and we just went for it. Just the three of us every day in a garage. But it was really improvised, the whole thing. We played it by ear, you know.
Okay, cool. So it sounds like it was more of uh I wouldn't say it was on a whim, because I mean, like you said, you worked for a couple years, you saved up money, so you definitely did have you were definitely prepared to go in that direction. But even so, as you mentioned, and you had some benefits of